All right, so this is not leaving, so I am going to delete this. There we are. And oops, it's not supposed to go that way. Here we go. And it's supposed to go full screen, and I don't know why it's not, but here we are. Mike Van Pelt, it is quite a pleasure to see you and celebrate this day with you. And that's not how it's supposed to go either. I'm trying to get us
We're
full
bouncing
screen.
all around.
And we're bouncing all around. And look at this amazing
Yeah.
book, True Man, True Ways, a roadmap of discovery to the masculine heart. This book has been such a joy to be able to work with you on. And I want to introduce our listeners, our viewers, to Mike Van Pelt. Quite an amazing man that Mike is. He's a seasoned Christian men's coach dedicated to helping men uncover their true potential, build stronger character, and create lasting legacies. With years of experience in leadership, personal development, and coaching, Mike has impacted countless lives by inspiring men to pursue purpose over mediocrity and integrity over complacency. He's the founder of True Man Life Coaching, a community focused on the radical reconstruction of a man's heart and soul, empowering men to embrace authentic masculinity in every role they take on, to be a father, a husband, a leader, or a friend. Mike Van Pelt, it's been a joy to work with you on this amazing, beautiful book. So let's talk about, how did this all start?
Which piece?
There had to be that beginning wake up.
For me, the whole true man world, as I have incorporated this true man name into everything that I've done, really started in men's small group. And of course, true man uh, came from Jesus Christ walk on earth as a true man. And at one point, when I was back in South Carolina, um, gosh, probably going on 6-7 years ago, when Paul Bailey and I started a men's small group. At one point, we're like, we should probably name our group, and we felt like that the world didn't need another men's group called Iron Sharpening Iron or something like that. And I was reading the Bible one day and really came across this whole idea of, hey, the ultimate man that we should follow and is our ultimate role model, although we'll never achieve his perfection, is Jesus. And so we came up with this idea of calling our group True Man, and it led to the True Man podcast and the True Man Life Coaching, and then ultimately the book. And so it's been fun for me to put together in the book what I really learned along my journey of, I don't want to say redemption or a comeback, but there was a lot of that going on, because like a lot of men, you go through life and you just kind of, you go down road Y when you meant to go down road X, and lost my identity for a while. And so the things that I put in the book were really simple things that helped me get my heart back. And I'm still, things always in progress, right? But that's kind of how True Man came to be. The brand came together.
It's beautiful. And I've published a lot of authors. Very few of the books are for men's empowerment. Many are written by women and for women. In fact, I have a big launch coming tomorrow and another one next week with great big book launches that are women centered. And I have found that for the gentleman, there is not that same wealth of just everywhere you turn. There's something else for women's growth and potential and learning to step into who she is. But for you to have this vision to bring this to our world is powerful, because I see so many young men that are just kind of floundering, and they're our future leaders, as are women.
Yeah.
But to provide a roadmap like you have. And I love this cover. This is just a
Oh,
beautiful
I know.
cover.
It turned out
Yeah,
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
totally awesome. So, um, tell me, tell the listeners the vision that you have for this, using this book to get the word out about what you're doing, and what you would like to see happen.
Yeah, Becky, I think that the best way for me to talk about that is to start with my story and really how this came to be. And so, you heard me mention Paul and us starting a small group, and it was really, so we had gone down this small group journey and we began to connect with people, and we had connected with a group that was having a men's retreat. And so I went to, I'd never been on a retreat, period, let alone a men's retreat. And so in the spring of 2019, I went to my first men's retreat with about 400 men. There was almost 400 men at that event. Very powerful event. And it was on a Saturday morning when the camp director, the guy that was running the retreat, said, "This morning we're going to start with 3 worship songs. And I want you to hear these songs as God singing them to you." And I wrote about this in the book. They played a song by Josh Groban called "You Are Loved." And it was really in that moment where I just almost fell to the floor. I felt God talking to me saying, "You're my beloved son, and I want an intimate relationship with you." And although I'd been a Christian all my life, I really didn't understand this whole uh, idea of intimacy with God, having a conversation with God. And so it was really in that moment, I looked around the room and I went, how many guys have had this same experience? And if they had, what do they do when they leave here? Where do they go? Who's helping them understand what just happened? Because what happened to me was I went through this period of not just weeks, but months where I was trying to unpack what had just happened to
Mhm.
me. And interestingly enough, I by the time I figured it all out, we were towards the tail end of 2019. And of course, 2020 rolls around. And by the end of February, the world shut
Everything.
due to COVID.
Right.
And there was a series of events, that began to happen. My wife's job was eliminated, and we had to went through that whole mess. But it was during that mess where I met a couple of people, and this whole idea of getting into the coaching and doing everything that I'd done really began to cement itself. But the whole for me the whole purpose in getting into Christian men's life coaching was I didn't see other people doing it, not a lot of people doing it. There were a lot of women coaches, there were a lot of women doing stuff for women, but not a lot of guys helping other guys. And it was interesting because I had a lot of people try to talk me out of it. They're like, "Man, you're crazy to do that because women will flock to you in coaching, guys won't." And so what I learned, and I kind of knew this because I'm a guy, um, guys will not ask for help until they're bleeding out. I mean, they gotta be, that they've got to be at the lowest of lows before they go ask for help. Unfortunately, that's really the wrong way to look at it. I've had faith coaches, I've had golf coaches, I've had business coaches, I've had podcast coaches. And the reason for that is I've come to understand that the one thing that we're not good at as men is asking for help.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
We're not good at asking for help. Thank God GPS on our phones has taken, honey, will you pull over and ask for directions off the table, for guys. That's probably saving a few marriages there. But the whole idea of working with guys is, and I've really started to shrink this down because what I want ultimately what I want to do with the book is get out and do a little speaking. And I just say this: let's start the conversation. Let's just start the conversation. And what I've learned is that we're better when we can get in groups and hang out together and learn from each other. And then we find out, oh, well, we're not as isolated as we thought. And then we find out, oh, you've gone through that too. And those are important things because as guys, man, we stuff that stuff down deep inside of us and we never have to deal with it. And unfortunately, a majority of the time that you end up dealing with it, it shows up in our relationships.
Right.
I've seen that time and time again. And so it shows up in our marriages, it shows up in our relationships with our children, but it always shows up. And that's why it's important to go take a hard look in the mirror and discover, hey, what's going on under the hood here, so to speak, so that I can get on the right path so that I can have the life that I want. And so for me, I wanted to take some really basic things and put them in the book. I've read a lot of books on masculinity, and some of them can get extremely deep. And I do think that's important, but I just wanted to do something in the beginning.
Do those first steps, the foundation part.
Yeah, let's start with some basics. I don't want you to jump off the deep end when you don't know how to swim yet. And so, I hope I accomplish that. And, I just want to give guys a good starting point to start having that conversation first with themselves and then with the people around them.
Well, I think, when as we traverse through this journey called life and kind of figure our ways out, you find that men in general think that they have to do it all by themselves, and they don't understand that they can ask for help. And oftentimes they see that as not being a manly thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's couldn't be further from the truth, because we each need some guideposts in our life. And I love the way you use the analogy of a roadmap, and the journey and the different things. And in the book, you give a lot of good areas. Not only do you have little video clips in your book, which now it helps if somebody's reading your book and saying, wow, this is really good, they want to also hear your voice. And so they're going to be able to hear your voice, find a way to be connected with you. But there's also really nice areas in the book where there's ways for them to really sit down and contemplate their own thoughts. And for many years, I had an insurance agent, and just the most incredible Christian man, and just really, really amazing gentleman. And he had a bookcase, and in that bookcase was book after book, a book of journaling that he had done. And you don't see that often for men to do journaling.
Yeah, you can't see this behind me, but I have a lot of books. And so one of the things that I commonly carry around with me are index cards, because they're easy to carry around. And so wherever I am, you might find me whip out some index cards and just start jotting notes, or journaling about the situation that's going on in front of me. And what I have found, in fact, I would say that the journaling probably led to the writing of the book in so many different ways. But what I have found is that and actually the journaling, probably you could say, were blogs. I used to do a lot of blogging, and I need to get back to doing that. But the blogs actually led to the podcast, and the podcast is probably taken over for the blogs. But it's all writing, and it's all getting out what's going on in your heart and mind. And we don't talk about this as guys. It's not a commonly talked about thing. And I think it's important that, however you do it, and journaling is a good one, because there's nothing like there's nothing quite like putting pen to paper. And, you know, if you can get down what's going on in your life, you know, you can begin to make the necessary changes that you want to make if that's what you want to do, or use it as a goal setting mechanism. What is it that you want to achieve in your life? What do you want your legacy to look like? And I think so. I encourage getting your thoughts down on paper.
You know, the I, you know, having written a book myself, kind of, it was for me being able to put those thoughts down in on paper totally changed my perspective.
Yeah.
Because when you have to put pen to it, get these thoughts that are kind of swirling in here,
Yeah.
and you have to write it, then you start to wait a minute, is that really the way things were or are? um, and really understand it from a different perspective, because writing is a whole different, uses a different part of our brain,
Oh yeah.
and is so vital to be able to use the tools that we have available. When you write and then go back and read it and go, wow.
Yeah.
You know, so what a beautiful tool that you have used to be able to be where you are today. So what is next for you?
Ooh, what is next? That's a great question. You know, I think what it comes down to, and one of the reasons why I wrote the book is to get out. I want to get out and get in front of groups and meet guys where they are and just start the conversation. You know, I don't necessarily need to lead the group, right? I can't
Right.
lead every group, but I think it's important that we find leaders who understand that it's important for guys to be in community. We can learn from each other. And I commonly say this. Why is this important? Because when men get in community and we better our best, we better each other, we can be better for our families. And if we're better for our families, we're better for our churches, we're better for our communities. And you know, I think that we need to grab hold of this
Mhm.
opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, there's the I've heard statistics across the map. I mean, generally speaking, the divorce rate has been always hovered around 50%. I've had people tell me after COVID that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 70.
Mm.
The fact of the matter is, and it's funny because you talked about young guys. I thought my audience was probably the middle-aged guys. And I believe that's still the case. But what's interesting are the number of people, the young people that contact me. And I believe that's because they haven't had either a man in their life or they haven't had a strong man in their life to help nurture them.
I
And
think,
so they're
yeah.
looking, and I think the young people nowadays are really open to this. And so that's something that I'm very interested in exploring because I feel like I probably reached that age in my life. I was at an event yesterday and the lady kept using the term 55 plus communities. And I was like, I'm not sure that I like being in
I
that
don't want to go there.
category, uh, you know, at this point in my life. However, one of the things that I have migrated to is having sage men in my life, those men that have been there, done that, who could offer those tips and tricks and shortcuts to me. And what I find myself in is I'm now at that stage. You know, I'm at
Yes,
that
yes.
stage where people are seeking out people like me who know a thing or two about a thing or two and are you know searching that out. But you know, for me, I think this is about starting the conversation and getting out there and using this book as a beginning platform for starting the conversation. That may come in the form of churches. It may come in the form of businesses that want to get their, um, men together to learn from each other. I don't necessarily know what it looks like, but I think it's important that we have these conversations, because my view of the world is we're actually much more alike and aligned on a lot of things than we are far apart. Now, the media has jumped in here and has
Media wants us to know other things.
pulled everybody apart because it's they I guess they've determined it's somehow sexy to cause all this angst, and it's really not. And I also think it's important that it's not a bad thing to talk about God. It's not a bad thing to talk about Christianity. It's not a bad thing to talk about, your love of Jesus Christ and following him. And I think that's an important aspect of what this is all about. And it's where I've kind of drawn the line and said, that's what I'm all about. Now, I don't run around throwing Bible verses over, but
You lead by example. Yeah.
leading by example, just like Jesus did. And I think that's the important thing. One of my favorite shows to watch, and I encourage everybody to go watch it, is The Chosen. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the way they set up the storyline. And in particular, the man that plays Jesus is such an incredibly lovable character. And I commonly say that's the Jesus that I want to know. And it's the Jesus that I hope I can become in terms of helping lead people towards that direction, and just being more joy filled in their life, more positive, more caring and loving. And all of these things are what Jesus was about. And so, we need to think about that before we raise our voice and
Right.
say, I'm on the right or I'm on the left, or, what. Hey, we're all here on this planet and we all have to live with each other, and we need to figure out a way to get along. And I firmly believe there's a way to do that without shouting at each other.
Yes, and I find it interesting that you talk about that it's the young people that are reaching out. And I think they understand, because there hasn't been a tremendous amount of good, solid role models, but they're understanding that if they don't get it in their immediate environment, it's out there.
I,
It is truly out there, and we have the technology now to make that happen. Our world isn't just our little tiny community.
yeah.
Our world is
And Becky,
right
the
at our
thing is
fingertips.
that the technology works for us and it
It
works
does.
against us. And I've said to my kids, my children are 22 and 20. And I've said to them for many years, I'm sorry you have to grow up in this environment.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And what's interesting about it from a technology perspective, they're so dependent on their mobile phones. And so they use all the apps and the social media. And I hate to break, the news to everybody, but that stuff ain't real, man. That you're seeing on there. And a lot of these kids have grown up. I was talking with a pastor here about a year ago, and he was telling me this story where he was walking down a hall and he heard these kids talking, and they were talking about Rocky, the boxer, the movie. And they were having this conversation about how Rocky was the greatest boxer of all time. And he turned around and went, "You guys are talking about Rocky Balboa?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's the greatest boxer of all time." And he's like, "That's a movie. That's not a real life character."
Right. Yeah.
And they argued with him about it. And so this is where we find ourselves, where, social media has convinced people of certain things. And the young people, because they're so dependent on getting their news and their resources from social media, they will buy into whatever.
But I think, don't you think it's going to have as with everything in life, there's a way that it all comes back around.
I think that there is a point where
Yeah.
people go, come on now. And I'd like to think that we've turned that point. I mean, one of the interesting things that I commonly hear, I was just up at Kennesaw State University, which I live fairly close to, talking with a business professor about potentially doing some stuff there with students. And what was interesting to him was one of the first questions he asked me was the students are going to want to know if you have influencers. Like, you know, and I understand that a lot of people recognize influencers as a big deal. And I'm not going to say they don't necessarily have their place, but to think that influencers are more important than, for example, building relationships is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
And
So there, I think it just needs to come around to a balance.
yeah,
And I think it will. And the fact is, I think that babies are born practically with cell phones in their hands, technology.
yeah,
Um, and I live in a neighborhood where, except for Halloween, I don't know if there's any kids out even living in the neighborhood. And all of a sudden, there's this swarm of kids, and because they're not out playing, they're in
yeah,
their houses on their devices. And when I grew up, I was always outside playing, and
yeah,
so it is a different world. But I have talked to a lot of young people, and they are starting to recognize that we don't need to sit all the time. We need to get out and we need to be doing things. And I think that our young people are, as long as we, as the older ones, are taking the lead and
yeah.
leading. Um, we're going to show them that there's a different way, and they're going to be the affecting of the change. But it lands on us to say
Yeah.
this is how it's done.
Yeah, we do need to lead the way. I guess in some respects, I hope that my book helps that. I mean, I talk about very basic things in the book, like exercising, watching your health, your money. I mean, these are all very basic things. However, we've gotten into the world. I was on a call yesterday with a guy that does some financial stuff, and I said, what's one of the biggest problems? And of course, he was talking about credit card debt, which makes total sense to me because, we see people living way outside their means all the time. And the reason for that is they're trying to keep up with everybody else.
Right, right.
And not everybody needs to have a Porsche sitting in their driveway. Not everybody needs to live in $1 million house. You need to live within your means and your budget and your health. I when I look around, I was telling you, we were talking about, I was on a cruise last week, and it's interesting because when you're on a cruise, you're in a very small area, and of course I was observing a lot of people, as I like to do.
Yeah, it's
And
my favorite.
and so what was interesting about that is I'm very cognizant of what's going on with my own health. Over the last couple of years, I've lost about 30 pounds. I feel, a good 15 years younger. I'm exercising certainly like I did 15, 20 years ago. And why is that important? I don't feel like I can lead True Man or any other community for that matter if I'm not at my physical or mental best. And so, but not only do I want to be that for myself, I want to be that for the people around me that I'm leading. I think that that's critically important. And what I come to realize, especially as I've gotten older, because certainly the older you get, your body has this wild sense of humor to it, is that nobody's going to take care of me except for me. I have to take care of myself so that I can be the best and go out and help other people. And I gotta say, um, I hope this doesn't come across judgmental. I'm amazed at the amount of people that don't take ownership over their health.
Right.
And a lot of people, I think, have this attitude of, well, I'll just put it off. The fact of the matter is your body doesn't take a day off.
Right. It
It
doesn't.
never
Right.
takes a day off. And so, if you're not taking care of yourself, at a certain point, you're going to pay the price. And you can't have all that you want in life if you don't take care of yourself. Now, it's more than just, eating right and sleeping. I believe faith, in a relationship with
It's
Christ
the
plays
whole package.
a big part of that. And so you've got to look at everything, as a whole. And, so I think, again, that's what I tried to bring together in the book, just really basic stuff at a ground level. Here's what you need to do. You don't need to bite the elephant all at once. I can say, after all this time doing all these podcasts that I've done, writing the book, all the things that I've done, I'm still very much a work in progress.
Oh, aren't we all?
Yeah. But, being willing to admit that and seeking out help in areas where you need it is critically important if you're going to be your best in life.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, I want to congratulate you on all you do, how you lead in our world, and we have the link in the chat. I want to say congratulations for all you do, and that as we wind down this podcast or this live stream, to recognize the gigantic steps you've taken along the way, and take time today to celebrate actually that this book is now out. It's available, and you can use that as a way to really get your message out to the world. And I know there are many wonderful men that as you progress along, just speaking on stages and doing
Yeah.
working retreats and everything, you will meet people that they'll walk with you hand in hand to make this all come to be. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's exciting to see it in print. It's
It
actually,
is. There's nothing like it, is there?
wow. Yeah. Pretty
Uh,
cool.
awesome. Well, congratulations to you. And I know we'll be talking more. It's been interesting. You are a best-selling author now, so
Oh,
way
yeah.
super cool. All right.